even if Ethiopia got this 2 billion, they're talking about a 4 billion deficit in the next few years. We know the country's come out of a 2-year devastating war. The economy is struggling. But first of all, when you hear that, Ethiopia is looking to get $2 billion in loans from the IMF, what are the few things that come to mind?
Well, the first thing, and I think the most important thing, is that no country has ever developed by using the prescriptions of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, or the World Bank on how they should develop their economy. And the most important thing to remember about getting money from the IMF is that it is only based on their conditions, the things that they say you must do in order to get the money. And the prescriptions that they enforce then on countries have been shown over the past several decades, experience with dozens and dozens of countries to leave countries continually mired in poverty and continually mired in a cycle of debt and borrowing that shackles them to this underdevelopment and a very particularistic role inside of the global economy. So my first thought is that Ethiopia is treading down a path that is addressing a real problem. I think when we think about development, the easiest way to think about it is you got to spend money to make money. So Ethiopia, by addressing the IMF, as many countries do, is addressing a real problem, which is that you need resources in order to develop the country and to reduce poverty and create opportunity. But they're pursuing a path, which is these IMF loans and the prescriptions that are alongside them, that in fact will not lead to the place that they at least say they would like to go. And certainly where I think the vast majority of people living in Ethiopia and who care about Ethiopia would like to see the country go in terms of lifting the country up out of poverty. So to me, it feels like the number one thing I think about is there is a lack of, on the one hand, real assistance coming from Western countries that claim to like Ethiopia, the United States. I see the Italian prime minister is headed there in a week or so. France, which allegedly is chairing the G20 debt relief mechanism of Ethiopia, that there's not a real commitment on their part to addressing these questions. And the IMF loan arena shows that they are really mostly committed to keeping Ethiopia mired in underdevelopment. But on top of that, there is a significant lack of, from my point of view, creativity and real analysis from the Ethiopian government about how they're pursuing the development needs they have, which are significant. And I would say perhaps even more significant than the $2 billion loan suggest and the $6 billion financing gap, because that's based on the IMF's own analysis of what they think the Ethiopian government can and should be spending, but it's actually not 100% relevant to the scale of the problem they're addressing. When you've got nearly 70% of the people in Ethiopia, roughly 80 million people living in poverty, according to the United Nations multidimensional poverty and indicators. And on top of that, you have another about 20 million people, roughly 20 million, just below that, who are at risk of falling into poverty based on that multidimensional poverty standard, plus the $20 billion the Ethiopian government has said will be required to rebuild from the war, and the billions of dollars, $3, $4, $5 billion every single year that's going towards those who are facing humanitarian needs and IDPs. So you have both the IMF issue, the so-called $6 billion, but that's really just based on what they think the government can and should be spending. And then you have the actual scale of the challenge as it deals with Ethiopia's development needs and imperatives, which is significantly higher than this $2 billion. So to me, it's a golden shackles type of thing. It might feel good right at the moment to get the $2 billion. You say you're going to do this, you say you're going to do that, but the conditions that come behind it and the scale of the need there mean that I think this will not be very effective in helping Ethiopia develop whatsoever, and it'll keep it trapped in a direction economically that I think will make it difficult to ascend as a nation.
This is Eyes on Africa News on Hermela TV. I'm Hermela Aragawi. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe, share, and support independent journalism by making a one-time or monthly contribution. You can do that in one of two ways. You can go to eoanews.com and click on donate. That's eoanews.com, or become a monthly patron on our Patreon at patreon.com/Hermela TV. That's patreon.com/Hermela TV, or download the Patreon app, sign up, find Hermela TV, and hit become a patron to get started. Thanks for your support.